So good afternoon or good morning wherever you are. Welcome to the B2B Marketing webinar channel and today's webinar, which is on marketing ops. The title is How to Enable Marketing Operations to Unlock Excellence in Your martech. My name is Joel Harrison. I'm Editor-in-Chief of B2B Marketing, and I'll be your host for today. We've got a very exciting panel discussion to come on this what is a really important and increasingly prescient topic in B2B around marketing ops, how it works, what best practice looks like within it. So we're looking forward to getting to having a great discussion about that in the next hour or so. So just as a way of a segue, the video we showed at the beginning is just related to our Get Stacked event, which is happening next month, which is our event basically for the marketing technology, or about martech, and for technology marketers, and marketers using technology as well. So that's something which a lot of what we're going to talk about today will relate to. We have two people who are presenting or training at that event, actually, and also actually a third company that's going to be involved as well. So hopefully there's a lot of resonance. This webinar should really engage on some of the similar topics and help kind of segue into possibly what will happen at our event later in the month if you're able to come. Hopefully it will give you a little insight to that, but it'll be valuable in its own right as well. So just briefly, I'm going to this is our panel for today. I'm going to get them to introduce themselves a little bit later on, but we're kind of covering all aspects of the marketing technology landscape and some great insights and knowledge about marketing technology and marketing ops, and a wealth of things to talk about. It's very. We've got some questions and some discussion points that we're going to run through a little bit later on. But it's very important that we can emphasise that we want to get as much of your input into this webinar as possible to make it valuable. There is a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Those of you who've not used this platform particularly before, and if you've got any questions about marketing ops, anything relating to what we're talking about, anything we haven't discussed that you think is important, please do use that Q&A function to ask us, and I'll get the views of the various panelists on that, and hopefully we can give you some insight and help you improve your understanding on this particular topic. So before I just ask the panel to introduce themselves, by the way, you can see me top left-hand corner. That's me. In case you were remotely interested, just a little bit of scene setting, really. So why are we talking about marketing operations today? Well, there is a growing insight, interest, and relevance in marketing operations as a topic and function. It's something which, my organisation, B2B Marketing, is all about understanding trends in B2B, and we're seeing a lot more interest in marketing ops, and it seems to be generating a lot of interest. And this is at least partly, or perhaps largely, perhaps you guys will tell us that, as a result of increasing investment and interest in martech within B2B marketing teams. So the martech function and how to deploy it is actually what it seems to be driving this to a certain extent at least. But in many organisations, it seems to be a nascent function or an emerging function. People haven't quite got their head around what it means. Hence, we thought today maybe it would be a good opportunity to kind of talk about what that might look like and what excellence looks like in marketing operations. I think that there's marketing ops also coincides with kind of change in the relations between technology providers and also third-party marketing experts. So understanding how to balance the kind of use of technology and also external resources and help is really important. I think and really around marketing technology, there are twin challenges. It's about maximising the potential of both internal and external resources. So as I said, both your internal teams and the skill sets you've got there, also these external resources, but also at the same time trying to work out, get best use out of your existing investments while looking at what's happening in the future, because we all know marketing technologies are really evolving, a fast evolving space, and one of the challenges that anybody involved in it faces is to actually make best use out of that and understand what's coming around the corner and what's relevant for you. So different challenges to be tackled at the same time. And I think that if you agree that marketing ops' challenges around marketing investment, well, the stakes have never been higher. It's never been so important to get this right. So just flipping over that last slide here, we did a part of we did some research last year as part of a report we did for our CMO audience around marketing ops, and we asked our CMOs about how important they felt the marketing operations would be for delivering an ongoing digital transformation. And as you can see, almost about 3/4, over 2/3 of people believe it's either very important or critical in terms of this kind of notion of a transformation. A lot of organizations, most of the organizations we speak to are ongoing some kind of evolution at best, or if not transformation. And I think that the recognition is that the marketing operations is a critical facet. An effective marketing operations function is a critical facet within that. So I think to try and help understand that and paint a picture of that, we designed this infographic last year, which is inspired by Shane, who's on the call as well, but also inspired by the classic board game Operations, which featured a much more portly gentleman, perhaps relevant to the kind of the 70s, and a children's game when it was designed. And this obviously the character in question here is a very much more lean, athletic type, which is in tune with our times today. But what this diagram is supposed to do is to talk about all the different facets of what the marketing operations function would be and relate it to anatomy. So hopefully it's a bit playful and get people thinking a little bit about what marketing operations actually does, and we may refer back to that later on in the call. So just to tee up some topics we're going to talk about today, but again, to reiterate, we very much want to be driven by you, and if there's something which is not on this list, it's absolutely fair game, so we'd love to get your views on what could be here. So I guess the first kind of question is marketing operations a function whose time has come? Is now the time for marketing operations where perhaps it wasn't a few years back? How does marketing operations fit into a marketing hierarchy within a B2B organization? Well, you have an existing marketing team. How do you, if you don't have marketing operations, where does it fit in? How do you structure it? Where does it report to? What skills do you need? That kind of thing. And further to that, what skills and attributes do you need for a marketing ops leader? Someone who's kind of in the kind of box seat in this kind of in the marketing ops challenge. What does it take to be a great marketing ops leader? So what are the attributes as well as the skills? And what, again, back to the thing we raised earlier on, what role do third-party agencies play in making marketing ops teams become more effective? So there's some of the things we're going to talk about later on. I'm going to move on and I'm just going to go to the panels for a second to ask our Q&A speakers today. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. So Rebecca, perhaps I could start with you. So tell us about yourself and your role at Sojourn.
Yeah, thanks very much, Joel. I am managing partner and co-founder at Sojourn Solutions. We are a marketing ops consultancy, and we focus on helping our clients, guiding our clients towards peak performance within marketing operations. So obviously that's very much within the martech space, but also I guess people, process, and all of the other attributes of marketing operations. I've been consulting in this space for over 11 years, but before that was a practitioner as well. And I guess that was at a time when marketing ops wasn't even an actual defined function. So have been in this space for a long time, and very excited to be able to speak on this topic today with you all.
That's fantastic. So you've seen the journey of it as a function, and it must be very exciting. So we're really excited to get your views and your perspective on this as an evolution. So welcome, thank you for joining us today. Next, I'm going to ask Shane, who is also a consultant. Shane, tell us about yourself and your insights into marketing operations.
Okay, well, welcome, and I'm really pleased to be part of this webinar this afternoon. I'm joining you from sunny South Africa, where, interestingly enough, the topic is very much around marketing operations and how it enables new ways and modern ways of working. So I think it's interesting to Rebecca's point as to whether this is a new function or something actually winding back in time, that marketing operations, particularly back in direct marketing days, existed, but it was very much a process-driven area, back end, if you like. And I see it now, the big difference is it's much more seen as a hub and central to people, process, and technology. So to me, it's absolutely central. Lots of consulting I'm doing is about how to set up these teams, what their function is, how to get them going.
Okay, great. So very interesting again to hear your perspective on this. And the thing with marketing is that there's not a lot new under the sun. It's a reformation of what's already been there, but seeing it through perhaps a different context. So we look forward to digging into that later on, Shane. Thank you very much again. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. And last but not least is Jack Witt from Jack. I'm not sure I pronounced your name. Is it Witt? Is that the
it's actually right it's Wilt, like when a flower dies.
Okay, I apologise. I should have checked that first. If I was a true professional professor, I would have done that. But welcome anyway.
No problem.
And you're involved in operations on 24, is that right? So you're going to come at this. Hopefully, you're going to come at it from the kind of client perspective.
Yeah, so I am the senior manager of demand gen operations at On24 here in San Francisco. So I'm calling in from very early morning today. Demand gen operations for us is kind of it's where demand gen and marketing operations meet. So my team is responsible for making sure that everything's working properly in not just Marketo, but across different parts of our martech stack. So it could be things like Terminus for advertising, or making sure things even get into Salesforce properly. So it's kind of where the rubber meets the road.
Okay, I like that. That's a great way of describing it. So I mean, it's wonderful to have such a multinational, kind of geographically diverse audience, panelists today. I feel like we're truly speaking for the global B2B marketing world today. So it's truly privileged to be part of this webinar. So thank you all of you for joining us. So I think we're going to, before I just dive into the questions, we've got a few polls today. Polls are really, really helpful from our perspective to understand where you are in terms of your engagement with the topic. So I really would urge you to take part in these and take just a minute to vote either way. So our first poll question, if I can call that up, is really around whether you have marketing ops function within your organization at the moment, and if not, where are you on your journey towards it? So do you currently have marketing ops within your organization? The first option is yes, it's a well-established function. Second option is yes, but it's still a pretty new function. Third option is no, but we're currently looking into it. Fourth option is no, it's not something we're currently considering to date. Or the last thing, you might say, what is marketing operations? I don't even know what it is yet. I'm here to find out, and I'm really confident we can do that for you. But the last option is someone who's really not even started their journey yet. So this is all about the maturity of your approach to this. So it would be great if you could let us know where you are on that. Whilst you're giving us your votes, I'm going to ask the first question to the panel, and that is. What I kind of posed earlier on, which is it fair to say that marketing operations is a function whose time has come, in B2B at least? Rebecca, you described your journey. You were working in marketing ops before it was even called that, or at least you were even aware of it was called that. So is that a nice leading question? Do you agree with that as a statement?
Yeah, it's. I certainly think that the time has come, Joel. But I think we have to also look at, is it kind of fully established as a function? We work at Sojourn with many organizations, and I think even Shane alluded to this, that don't necessarily have, a full definition of what role marketing ops should play within their marketing and within their organization as a whole. And so given that, and even if you just go out and Google marketing ops job descriptions, I think there's such a wide range of what organizations think could be included or should be included. And so I think that indicates, yes, the function is absolutely, in the forefront, I think, of marketing leaders' minds, but maybe how it's played out and really what is within the remit of that team is not fully defined at this time. And I think that's very exciting for anyone who is either thinking of moving into this area or is already in this space.
And that feels like often part of the kind of the hype machine that is in marketing, and particularly in B2B, where you have there's a buzzword that goes around, people jump on board the bandwagon for that buzzword without necessarily understanding what it means for them, or with a degree of license to interpret it in whatever way they see appropriate. Shane, is that a fair summary? Do you think people are interpreting it in a way that they would choose?
I think Rebecca's completely right. It's an evolving function, and I think the important thing for everybody on this webinar to think about is it is not a one-size-fits-all function, and it's back to business need. And really understanding is what is the value that this function is going to provide to your organisation. So we're into immediately things like culture, strategy, organisation, because I think if you go out there thinking, absolutely to Rebecca's point, I can just put out a standard job function tick, that's not going to help you. So, I think that's clear understanding of what you expect this function to deliver. Is it efficiencies? Is it effectiveness? Is it both?
Okay, so we're going to dig into that a lot more detail later on. So thank you very much for that, Jack. How does it play out then at On24? I mean, how long has the function existed there for you guys on the ground? It sounds like it's reasonably well established. Is it something which is a mature function, or is it still pretty embryonic, still growing?
It's a little bit of both. So the marketing ops function it's pretty well established. The demand gen ops, which is what my team is doing now, is fairly new. It's because marketing ops, like you guys have said, it's pretty hard to define. And what's working for us now is, us demand gen executioners also being in marketing ops functions too, because we need to make sure that everything's running properly, things are being tracked, attribution's getting done, all that stuff. And because the people in demand gen, are the ones out there doing this, it helps to have them doing an operations role too, because it all kind of rolls together.
I think it's interesting already that you've got, within marketing ops, there are different subdivisions of marketing ops, which is something I haven't considered, but actually you do think about it, it's logical.
Yeah, especially I think the overlap with demand gen is also kind of just a natural overlap in my experience. It's so far it's working very well, and I think it's going to work very well going forward too.
Okay, well that's very good to hear. And Rebecca, does it matter that people don't necessarily you can be a more fluid approach and definition to what it actually is, or do you think that a harder and faster definition is more helpful because it gets everybody on the same page?
I think it really comes back to what Shane was saying. What is it that you want from your marketing ops function? And I think marketing leaders need to define that, before they go out to create a function or before they kind of give somebody that job role. Because otherwise, if you don't start with the end in mind, it's going to be very difficult to kind of retroactively fit, what you create to, I guess, the result that you want.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily matter. So I'm just going to look at the results of whole now. So what we've got to so far. So if you haven't voted yet, please do. But you can see, I don't know if everyone can see the slide that is the results slide as we are currently. 20% of people are saying yes, it's a well-established function. 36% say it's a new function. That kind of tallies with the research that we did last year. I think people seem to be, our audience seem to be building up marketing operations at the moment. A further 8% are kind of looking into it at the moment, and then there's a third of respondents either haven't considered it at all or don't even know what it is. So a very, very broad range of people. Shane, what do you think about that? Is that kind of was that what you would have expected, or did you have no preconceptions to before this?
Yes, I think that reflects very much the landscape of where people are, and I think it's interesting the well-established function. I mean, it's no surprise to me, hearing that Jack is well ahead, if you like, in his both functionality and what the business does, because of it's been adopted very early by large tech businesses, and because there's a clear value there in that demand gen function. But I think for others, completely still pretty new. Other people looking at it, absolutely is where I would say the main clients that I work with are.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good to hear. So there you go. Some anecdotal and some small qualitative, quantitative evidence there of where marketing ops is a function. So I think we can move on back to our kind of presenter slide. So I think that the next thing is to really just address the point about technology, martech as a role, a remit for marketing operations as a function. Jack, how much is the kind of operations, whether it's marketing ops or demand gen ops or any other ops you care to speak of? How much is it concerned with technology? You mentioned a couple of things there that are relevant to you. Is it primarily about technology first and foremost, or is that just a means to an end?
I think it's primarily about technology first and foremost. And then in regards to selection of technology, I think our role is to sort of be realistic about what can be accomplished. There's been certain times where, we're looking at, say some different technology, and what we can get out of it sounds really great, but how we get there and whether or not it's realistic and whether we can actually get these things out of it and how it's going to interact with the rest of our stack, that's where I think we add a unique perspective to things, just to keep people grounded.
So you're the really boring people who say, actually, no, I'm sorry, you can't boil the ocean in one go. You've actually got to...
Yeah, essentially, pretty much.
That's the fun police of marketing. That's
exactly what we are. We're the fun police.
That's a tough job, but somebody really has got to do it. But so I feel your pain. I share your pain. Rebecca, how does that relate to you? Is it all about, does Jack's description there tally with some of your clients you work with? And you know, I know that you do a lot with marketing automation, for example. You know, technology seems to be part of a lot of what you do with your clients. Is that fair?
I would say it's a part of it, but it's not what I would in my experience, what I would say, you know, encompasses the whole of marketing ops. We always look at it as, I guess, some additional pillars that are key to marketing ops, and the first of those would be strategy. So marketing ops teams aligning with the marketing leadership to understand what is the vision for the organization, what are we trying to achieve. As Shane mentioned a bit earlier, is it effectiveness? Is it efficiency? Is it both? You know, what are the metrics that we're going to hold ourselves accountable to? And then, of course, you know, aligning with other peers throughout the marketing organization around the customer. So what is that customer experience that we're creating? How can technology underpin that? But there are other components to it, you know, that are needed. And then obviously people and process. You know, you can't have, I guess, the technology without thinking about how is it going to affect people's jobs? How are they going to be able to use that efficiently? How are they going to be enabled? And then the processes. So how do those handoffs between either team members within marketing or with other teams in the organization, maybe sales or IT or, you know, maybe a web or a digital function, you know, anything like that. How are those handoffs going to occur? And then ultimately at the end of all of that discussion around, I guess, those other pillars, you have to kind of turn back to what are you doing about your data? And although that might not be a remit that is solely for marketing operations, it needs to be thought about as a portion of their role, because they would need to work with whoever else is managing data across the organization. That might be within sales, it might be within IT. You know, essentially whoever is thinking about data stewardship would need to be involving a marketing ops function as well.
So it sounds you're being very measured about this, which is, and I think, is exactly the right approach, and I understand why, and I think it's a sensible way of doing it. A lot of the things that you talked about, even when they're not actually about technology, they are enabled by technology. I mean, data being a classic example. Data requires technology to get a good marketing insight. You need to use technology to achieve that. So there's even where the end is not the technology, the means may still be. Is that fair?
I think it is, but you know, what we run into time and time again is working with a client where they have purchased a particular martech solution and they've thought that this is going to solve all of their issues around on generation or around lead management or whatever the challenge in their business is. And inevitably, you know, the technology is a piece of that puzzle, but it is just one piece. And so they need to look at, for example, the customer experience or the strategy or how they're enabling their people, you know, all of those other components to be able to really get the success that they're expecting from the martech.
Okay, so I mean, I think that anytime we talk about the strategy first, technology second is the but then everyone's always tempted to rush forward to the technology, aren't they? Because it's for all kinds of reasons. But that's a very sound message from my perspective. So we're starting to get a few questions in from the audience, which is great. So please do, if you've got any other questions or anything that we've been talking about or points to raise, please do use the tab at the bottom of the screen to do that, to share those, and we can get some answers for you. Daniel from UCC asked about what's the MO, what's practical examples outlining the role. I mean, Shane, I'm going to direct this at you because I know how good you are at difficult questions. I'm sorry, this is a quite difficult question, but I guess I would say the answer.
No, that's a great question.
Okay, well, I was going to caveat by saying, go for it.
It was a great question anyway, as a follow-up to what Rebecca's just said, because I think in terms of really trying to explain why the time has come for marketing operations, it's no doubt about it, is that one of the challenges that we face as marketeers is not only, to Rebecca's point, do we have complex data flows, we have data in silos, but we don't just have a martech stack, we have other technology that martech needs to integrate into. And I think this role, this sort of hub idea of basically being an enabler, which is a really important word to me, is central to somebody that you're bringing into marketing operations leadership function. And I think this is an interesting discussion in itself, is that in terms of where do they sort of operate? Are they a middle management doer, or are they actually being brought in, and some companies are bringing in a leader to sort of really help join the dots and work out better processes and better ways of working, and particularly to improve performance. You know, to Jack's point, the reason it works as a function within demand is that you're trying to ensure that marketing operations is just making things better all the time, whether it's better data flows, better customer experiences. That's really what you're looking for. Hopefully that's sort of enough of an answer.
That's a very good answer. Without giving this person this I think provide a very specific 10 bullet points on what the role is or whatever. I think maybe slightly, because I guess the answer is, for me, it depends. All of that you said, but also it depends, as you said, it depends on what the need is, particularly in that organisation. That's how I would respond to that. So, I mean, and Jack, what do you think about what Shane said there? Is that a fair response to that question?
I think so. Yeah, I think that was a great response. Okay. I really actually don't have anything to add. I think it was perfect.
There you go. Absolutely nailed it. That's got to be good. So you know, I think it's the process. It sounds like that Daniel should be going on is to try and better define that role with the various stakeholders concerned. Jeff from Digitent, hello Jeff, has asked, what's the size of the poll? Well, we've got about 250 people registered for this. I don't know if we've got that many on the call, but I suspect it's probably kind of around 100 people, something like that. So it's not a totally scientific poll, but it's a relevant snapshot of who we've got, of who've wanted to participate in this webinar. So hopefully that's useful for you, Jeff. I hope all's well with you. So I guess the next question to move on to really is looking at, and this actually dovetails a little bit with the question we had before, which is how should marketing operations fit into existing marketing function? Are there any kind of rules of thumb or guidelines about the number of marketing ops people required within a team? And the answer necessarily will be kind of, it depends. But I think one of the things that, for me, if you look at the little infographic, the tongue-in-cheek infographic we did, which I'm just going to put onto the screen right now for you, the operations board game themed one. What that really shows is that what marketing operations does is potentially is responsible for is an awful lot of what the marketing team is. As Shane said, making things work better. It's almost a bit about what isn't marketing operations. And Jack, again, I wanted to pitch that at you. You know, I know you may not have had much time to digest this, but what bits sit outside the operations teams? Does everything get subsumed by operations, or are there substantial bits that aren't operations?
On this infographic, one of the things that sticks out to me, at least in the way we do things on 24, the project management part, that kind of sits outside of marketing operations. We usually have people on different parts of the marketing team who are the project managers or project owners for different initiatives, and they're owning it, but we're the ones, you know, helping to execute on this to make sure everything's running properly, or we have all the needed pieces for everything to work. That really sticks out to me immediately.
Okay, but are there other bits? You know, does marketing operations kind of encompass a large amount of what marketing does as an overall business function?
Yes, absolutely. We consider ourselves a horizontal service center for the whole marketing team. So it overlaps with everything. It's involved in almost everything that we're doing, every initiative.
It's involved, but not necessarily leading on those things. It participates
Yeah.
and helps and it enables. Again, that's Shane's
Exactly.
word. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So Rebecca, then it's not a case necessarily of operations taking over. It's just helping work better with what's already there and deliver things more effectively. Is that a good summation?
I think it is. I think it's also about how marketing can interface with other departments within the organization to smooth those relationships too. So, most commonly it would be with sales or sales operations, potentially with IT, depending on how the company is organized, and maybe with finance. But I think that's an area where, yes, marketing ops is to enable the marketing team to ultimately do better marketing, to see, more value from the effort that they're spending on any initiative. But I think it's also to broker relationships with other departments where marketing data is going to be used within, either those conversations. So, for example, within sales or particularly for the martech conversation, if IT is involved there as well.
So there's a kind of a diplomacy role associated with this. It's not just people who might be, again, it kind of just detracts from the notion that it might just be somebody who is technology savvy, sat in a corner playing, selling, deploying technology well. Just as good marketing across the whole piece needs to work. This person needs to be able to be sensitive and nuanced and intuitive around how other people work to get them to execute their role most effectively.
Absolutely. I think there's definitely a high degree of, just understanding of the business, and then, how to create collaborative relationships across the business because, marketing is not working in a silo. It needs to be joined up and aligned with sales, and the same with IT and certainly with finance.
Okay. Shane, you helped inspire us to do this. Sorry, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I was going to give a practical example to the point that Rebecca just made about what that means in practice, because there's one that's right at the forefront of my mind, where, in effect, the sort of marketing operations person may be looking at one data stream, which might be maybe your web leads, for example, but might not be seeing a sales data stream, which could be inbound calls. And I think it's when you look at the two together that's really powerful, because otherwise you've got gaps in your information. And I think so it's joining up processes, it's joining up data, and that was one just that really struck a chord with me, where in fact the volume of leads marketing were really happy with. Unfortunately, sales ops weren't, because they weren't able to answer the number of then subsequent calls, and nobody was looking at both together.
So having a combined operations function there's value in that, definitely. Jack, is that something which you experience? Sorry, Shane, go on.
It's whether it's combined or whether you're working together, and I'd be interested to know how you do it.
That's a great question. So I think you've got a great point here that you need to be working well, especially with your sales ops and sales team. It's really easy to get siloed and only look at the things in your little universe, so to speak. This I think for this to be effective, you need to have good leadership even up farther to chain. So people, heads of marketing, need to be working well with sales to open up communications and make sure we're all looking at the same things. We have actually been doing pretty well at this, especially the last year or so. Our marketing leadership is working really closely with sales, and so we get feedback from them, and we're aware of things like incoming calls and stuff like that, especially with our new MDR role. I think you have a great point there.
So it all comes back to marketing and sales alignment. Wherever you are in marketing, you can't avoid that, the importance of that. That has to make that happen. Were you going to say something? Sorry.
Oh, so neither can be successful without the other.
Okay. All right. That was a very, very fair point. So I've got another question from Tom from Yellowfin, BI. So Tom's asking, how technically savvy do you need to be with technology to be successful as a marketing ops person? That's a really good question. Rebecca, what do you think?
I think you do need to have some level of technical aptitude and just willingness to get in and try. Ultimately, you're going to be working probably with at least a handful of martech solutions. And so, just having, I guess, a willingness to try. I don't think that necessarily you have to be the expert in any one of those. Depending on the size of the organization, obviously, if it's a little bit smaller, you might need to be. But, I think thinking about how those join together, how that data flows for marketing and then ultimately into the sales arena as well, I think that's probably more applicable. But, I think as we said earlier in the call, you're never going to get away from technology within a marketing team, and particularly within marketing ops. And so I think that you have to be willing to use it. And I think in most cases, certainly in my experience, marketing ops people really enjoy the technology. They enjoy the experimentation and the ability to analyze because of the technology. And I think, that's probably going to drive them to be quite technically savvy anyway.
So you don't have to be a geek, a total technology geek, to make this work. Having a business acumen and an ability to engage with it that's more important.
Yeah, I think so. And particularly if you could rely on, either people within the team that are real experts in a particular technology, or potentially outsource that. Use a third party to be able to get that real deep level of expertise.
Okay, that sounds sensible. Shane, do you agree, disagree? Any further comments?
Yeah, no, I concur on that point about, what expertise do you have in-house? And if you've got great technical people, then maybe what you need in your marketing ops role is actually something back to Rebecca mentioned about the function is more in terms of going and working and communicating with stakeholders. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you don't have that skill and resource, and actually that's something you need to beef up and should be a core part of it. And I completely concur with what Rebecca was saying about really thinking hard about your marketing ops role, what you need to do in-house, what you can outsource. And I was chatting to Ian Benison, who has this function at TMF and is basically Chief Marketing Operations Lead. And he started with him. He built the function. So if you want to know where do you start, you can start with one person. And very savvy, outsourced a lot to get him faster, more quickly.
So let's come back to the point about outsourcing, because that's a really good one, and I want to definitely pick that one up. First of all, just worth saying to everybody, if anybody out there listening, have some questions, we've got about 20 minutes left. Please do get any questions in you've got, and we'll do our best to cover those. I wanted to launch the next poll, which we can see right now, which is, as it seemed like a timely point to ask it, which is, how significant a part of the role and remit of marketing ops is the deployment and use of technology? Well, actually, I probably should have asked this before I got the panelists to tell us what they thought, because you're obviously all going to respond with what the panel told you, because they're obviously the experts here. But if you're not minded to do that, we'd lovely to get your take on this question, which is, so the role of technology in marketing ops, it's the number one focus. The second option is tech is a means to an end, but it's not what they're focusing on. The third is tech is important alongside other things. The fourth is tech's not really important, or the fifth option is don't know. So it'd be great if you could let us know what you think about that. So why don't we, whilst we're able to respond to that, why don't we kind of come back to the point around internal versus external resources? Perhaps it might be interesting to ask Jack whether is all of your ops function internalized, or do you use any kind of external third parties?
We do use one third party, a consultant. I think it's important to know where your knowledge ends and where you need to pick up outside help for things like this, and that's part of being successful and stuff is knowing your limits. and that's what we do. So we do use an outside consultant for some things, yeah.
And do you think that that's something which you will, has that been fairly static, that use of resource, or is that something which you've dialed up and dialed down, or you might perceive in the future that you perhaps might need more help, or sorry, carry on.
It really depends on what the initiatives are at the time. Right now, we're using them pretty intensely for something, but we aren't always using them intensely for something. It ebbs and flows.
Okay, so it sounds like it's been a very useful resource for you.
It is,
Rebecca,
yeah.
Rebecca, you're obviously providing these kind of services, and to Shane's point, it sounds like possibly. Are you working with people in, like the example Shane gave us of TMF? They were using people at the beginning of the journey with marketing ops. Is that often where you find your role, or are you doing that as well as working with people who are quite mature in terms of their marketing ops functions?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Joel. I'd say we find ourselves, across that range of maturity. For some organizations, where they're just getting started out, they need, just essentially extra pairs of hands to be able to help with, the doing that needs to be done. In other cases, what we're being used for is expertise around a particular technology or around a particular solution that needs to be delivered. And then in some circumstances, it's more as an advisory service, so ongoing, analysis and looking at what they're delivering, what the marketing ops team is delivering, and then being able to, as a third party, looking in from the outside, review that, give them some recommendations on maybe areas that they could be either focusing on more or maybe stepping back from, and then looking at their roadmap as well, and thinking about what are the steps that they need to be putting in place as they plan for the next, for example, fiscal year or quarter or whatever it is.
So there's potential, and there's a role and relevance for kind of external providers at every different stage, and it's not necessarily the case that you need someone to get yourself set up, and then thank you very much. You're on your own. You can play a role at different points in the journey. Shane, and what's your take on this? Do you think that perhaps people's would you say that the nature of the challenge changes, and therefore potentially the opportunities or the need will change, and therefore probably the type of third parties that are involved might change as well?
Yes. So on both of those excellent points, and the value of outsourcing, and I'm not just saying because it's what I do, but to Jack's point, it's completely about scalability. So you might need more resources. You might have quite a mature marketing operations, but actually just due to something that you might be testing or piloting, you might want to ramp that up, but you're not ready yet to invest internally. Or back to Rebecca's point, I find that the main value, no matter where you are on the journey, is just that external view and expertise and lens to be able to provide an independent view. Because the thing about marketing ops is you should be really close to the business. I mean, you're in it. You're at the core, and sometimes that makes it very difficult to take a step back and look at it and just say, well, how could we do it differently? And I think that's to me always the value of using somebody external to do that, and also to tell you what others are doing and benchmark yourself. So that's really what you're getting through an external. But absolutely, this is a core function that you want to be building in-house because it's absolutely core to a business success.
Okay, thank you, Shane. So I'm going to look at the results of the next question. So again, just a reminder, we asked how significant a part of the role and remit of marketing ops is deployment and use of technology. So 13% said it's their number one focus. 23% said it is a means to an end, but it's not what they're focusing on. And the vast majority said tech is important alongside other things. So that's interesting. People there's a big swathe of people who think that it's tech isn't certainly the absolute number one. There's various different options going on. I don't obviously know the extent to which the wonderful comments and the wealth of insights from our august panel influenced this this vote. It could be the case, but it suggests a degree of that we've got an informed panel. Jack, do you think this is do you think that they've got it right here, or are you surprised by this?
I'm not surprised. I think that's exactly what I would have guessed, as a matter of fact. It looks really accurate to me.
Okay, well that's good. So we've got a very educated audience. I knew that already because the B2B marketing audience is a great audience. So there we go. So I'm going to go. There's a question we've got from Hallie. I hope I pronounced that name correctly, from Green Sky. And Hallie's asked a great question, which is, what advice or information do you have for people who are new to marketing or marketing ops about evaluating martech? That's a great question. It's interesting in the context of what we just said. Jack, perhaps I can go to you to start with on this one, as you didn't give us. You were very succinct in your last answer.
The first advice I can give you is you really need to figure out what your goals are for the new piece of technology. What do you expect to get out of it? How do you expect it to interact with your other parts of your martech stack? You know, how do you expect it to interact with your marketing automations or your CRM? It's really important that you first are very clear about what your goals are for the technology, and then from there you need to move into how it's going to interact with everything. And also, one thing I think is overlooked a lot is, do you have the internal resources and bandwidth to make this work? Do you have the time to put in to get enough out of the technology, or do you need to, go third party with a consultant or an outside firm? I think that's something that's often overlooked, and it's incredibly important.
So Billy really kind of cast a really cold, hard eye over the whole thing. It sounds like you're saying. Shane, what do you think? Has Jack nailed it there? Is there anything else that you would kind of add or disagree there?
I think he has. I think he's completely nailed it, which allows me to do an unashamed plug to say, come to the one-day Marketing Operations Masterclass. I'm very tongue-in-cheek, but actually, I know that the people who've already signed up and registered this, the value that they'll get from the day is not just the if you like, what could it be, but is meeting other people who are in exactly the same place and other people who are marketing operation managers themselves and talking to their peers. I think talking to your peers is just so helpful. They'll give you tips and hints. They'll tell you what not to do. But yeah, come to the Marketing Operations Masterclass.
Thank you for the plug, Shane. We will plug that again a little bit later on with some more information about what that is, when that is, and how you can get involved. But yeah, I would urge you to come to that. I'm sure it'll be a great thing. And the thing about events, as you say, is that it's not only what you learn; it's about who you meet and the shared perspectives. Rebecca, do you have anything to add to this, or do you think that's a good summary on that question?
I think it is. I think the only thing I would add is around Jack's point around the, I guess, what resource does it take to make it work, but also thinking through what is the change that you need to affect within the organization. So, technology always brings change. You're either automating something or you're maybe integrating it, and that's going to change what people's roles look like, or maybe how they go about their roles, and thinking through that change and then how you would get your team members on board with that level of change is really important, because I think that's something that we see time and time again, that maybe the people aspect of that change has not been thought through when a company is selecting a new technology solution, and then it's kind of almost shoehorned into the final deployment plan, which is obviously not great for anybody, and doesn't lead to as much success as maybe they're hoping.
And I think it's a very important point that the kind of alignment and integration and co-reliance of technology and people and technology is critical, and yeah, it does seem to get overlooked, or at least not the failure to recognize the seriousness of it. It's a very, very good point to make. So I've got another question from again, Vipin, I believe, is from Tata, and Vipin's asked, what are the performance measurement metrics which marketing operations can use? I'm going to go to Shane as a starting point for this one. Shane, what do you think? What are the metrics which marketing ops can or should use?
Gosh, this is a back to, I promise I'm not fudging the answer, but this is a back to what are the metrics for the business that they need to measure. Because clearly, if you're a B2B organisation with e-commerce, then you're going to be looking at those numbers. If you're not, and you don't know the end sales value, then you're going to be looking at other efficiency measures. And are they number of leads? Are you sophisticated enough that you're into your MQLs and your SQLs? So there's all manner of performance metrics that you can use. And I know some organisations, this might sound scary to some who are on this webinar, who are starting to get marketing operations to look at individual marketing people efficiencies. In other words, what is the output you expect from each marketer? And that's quite different rather than, looking at it purely from customer metrics. So that is a bit of a, how long's a piece of string answer, but it can be so many things.
I think that's a fair answer, but it's also a good question to ask as well. I mean, perhaps it might have been fairer of me. Apologise, Shane. I dumped that one on you. To be honest, Jack, actually, from his experience, Jack, you're doing this. So what metrics are you using?
Oh boy, there's quite a few that we use. It could be as simple as responses / successes for a given program. So for a webinar like this, it could be registration, attendees, and no-shows, up to pipeline influenced by each different program. It's really unique to each organization. My last company I was at, we measured completely different things than we do on 24. It's going to have to be what your particular goals are at your particular company.
But that's all very good. But it sounds like, and this may not be a but, just a point. I mean, these are the same metrics that everybody else in the marketing function will be using. So the metrics aren't different. It's all about the objectives. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Okay. So no rocket science. It's all about what you're trying to achieve.
It's what you're doing with them, and I think that's the difference. And I think you asked a question which you didn't answer a while back about the marketing operations and the fun diagram, if you like. And the reason that sort of resonates is that I think marketing operations have a job to do sometimes to be a bit of a surgeon. And that and I'm sure this is true, Jack, for you, is that when you see metrics that are off, it can be less or it can be more, then there's actions that you in marketing operations need to take. And I think that applying a scalpel sometimes, or the stethoscope or whatever it might be, is your job in marketing operations is looking to improve things. That's really, to me, the difference. Whereas perhaps the campaign team are looking at the campaign, but they're on to the next one.
Yeah. I can. Yes, that's a very good point, and you can really see that they're too busy with their day job to see the bigger picture and to try and make things better. Or to enable in the bigger picture. That's a very, very sound point. Rebecca, have you got anything to add on this one? Is there anything about the metrics, and what are your clients typically measuring?
I think, I guess, just to add to what Shane was saying, it's about, I think in my mind, marketing ops is looking at the metrics holistically, right, across the whole of marketing ops, and then, across the whole of marketing organization, and then working to, I guess, identify those peaks and troughs, and then what the team as a whole can do to, to either perform better in those areas or to, maybe stop doing something that's not driving revenue or whatever it is. I think it's that holistic view that is absolutely critical, and in my mind, that's a huge portion of what marketing ops teams should be focused on. Working hand in hand with their colleagues across the marketing team and also with marketing leadership. I guess just to answer your second question about what our clients are typically looking at as KPIs in this area, a lot of it is going to be about what value the marketing team is delivering for the business. So typically that's going to be revenue, so maybe pipeline, but then tracked back into revenue, and then that might be, as Shane was saying, looking at the different conversion stages through an integrated sales and marketing funnel, so MQLs, and then how that ultimately gets handed off to a salesperson and then tracked through the opportunity stages as well. But then there's also what I always kind of consider as maybe the softer metrics around the efficiencies, and they're not as I guess like hard and fast as maybe some of the revenue metrics, but being able to say we have increased the marketing team's output by X%, or we've decreased the number of man hours that it takes to deploy this particular type of campaign. Those are also great metrics to be looking at.
Okay, that's a very good point. I can imagine there's a whole range of them, and some of them are kind of just softer than others. So we're just about out of time now, and I've got one last question to answer. But before I do that, I want to ask the panel really briefly, because and think soundbite here, think not extended answer. If someone's on this call looking at marketing ops, either a career in it or developing a function, starting marketing ops up, what's the one piece of advice that you'd offer to them around what should they do? What's the key thing they should do, having been on this call? So sorry, let's start with Jack first of all.
I think the first thing you can do is you need to define what you need to get out of the marketing ops role.
Okay, so just be clear what you're trying to achieve. That's very sensible. Shane, how about you?
Yes, I think as well as you defining it is ensuring that the business has support for this and what they expect the function to deliver, because you might have a view as to what its function is, but I have found sometimes a misalignment. Sorry, that wasn't a one-word answer, but aligned to the business strategy.
Okay, makes sense. And Rebecca, last but not least, because I appreciate it's often difficult to answer after you've had lots of good points stolen from under your nose, but anything to add to what Jack and Shane have just said?
I think if you do have that strategy defined and you've got support from the business, then you probably are going to be looking at hiring somebody. And I would be always looking for somebody who is willing to challenge the status quo. Like that would be one of the key attributes of somebody, if I was interviewing for them as a marketing ops person.
Okay, and that's a very good point, which picks up one of the questions I didn't get a chance to answer, so thank you very much for doing that. So the one question talking of questions we didn't get a chance to answer, Rachel from Coates asked, what's the best way to meet other marketing ops people, other people marketing ops? Well, thank you for asking that question, Rachel, because the best way to do that is to attend our event, which is coming up in March, which we've teased you earlier on. So our event's called Get Stacked, and we have a variety of different things going on relating to marketing ops. There's going to be 350 B2B marketers there, all working in marketing technology. But along those lines, we also have it's a 2-day event, and on the 20th of March, Shane, who's on the call, obviously was running a training workshop on marketing ops. So it's a full-day session talking about how to make marketing ops work and how to be an excellent person within marketing ops, but also within the conference itself. That's on the 21st. We've got a session on the value of marketing operations with Rebecca, who again is also on the call. There's also Paul Stevenson of O2. So they're going to be talking about, I think, if I'm right in thinking this, about some of the work you've been doing at O2. And I know that having spoken to Paul at length about what the work you've done there, it's extremely interesting what's happened and the transformation that's gone on at O2. So that's a really, really fascinating session to go and see. So I'd heartily recommend that. So those are on the market on the 20th and 21st of March. And it's also worth me looking on a slightly tangential note about webinars, because Jack's from On24, and we have Jack's colleague Chris from On24 is talking there about why webinars need to be your marketing personalization trigger. So hopefully those are 3 really good reasons to attend our Get Stacked event, which is coming up next month, and also incorporates the B2B martech Awards as well in the evening. So a packed day of things to learn about. And there's some resources, I believe, which you can access on the resource function within this webinar. So, but One other thing to bear in mind as well, if you've enjoyed this webinar, we've got another one coming up. Our next one is happening on the 27th of March, so exactly a month's time, and that's on performance marketing, which is a really growing topic in B2B, becoming increasingly important. So if you're interested in that, please do tune in the same place, the same time. You can register for that session, and that should be a fascinating exploration, again, of something which is up and coming in B2B marketing. So that's all from me this afternoon. I just wanted to say thank you very much to our panel. Really fascinating observations and great insights from them. It's been really much appreciated, their time. For calling in from all around the world, from South Africa and from San Francisco and here in the UK. So really appreciate your time. Thank you very much to all of you for being part of this today. Thank you also for everyone who's dialed in and called in from wherever they might be. I hope it's been useful to you. We'd love your feedback, and we hope you can join us again for another webinar very soon. So that's all from us for this afternoon or this morning. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you again very, very soon.